and family counselor at Clay. Meghna comes with an extensive experience in supporting early years development of children across different geographies. In this webinar, Meghna will delve into the subject of unplugging from screens and offer innovative approaches to keep your children engaged and active. Discover the secrets to fostering creativity, planning outdoor adventures, and integrating learning through play. All of this while building a vibrant community for your children's growth and development. We will also discuss how children and we as parents can plan to make the best and balanced use of the digital exposure that we have. Meghna brings a unique blend of professional expertise and first hand practical experience as a mother herself to two growing children. Stay tuned as Meghna shares invaluable insights and strategies to keep your children active and engaged. Welcome, Meghna.
Thank you, Kimchi. Thank you so very much. Well, such a long, long introduction. But the best part, the music to my ears, is my motherhood. Yes, you have rightly put that we do read a lot basis my professional involvement, and thankfully, I always say we are the chosen ones. We are the blessed ones because we get the opportunity to work with children. Having said that, yes, motherhood brings its own flavor, and I can share what I use as a mommy, but more the studies, the science that we keep receiving, more so after pandemic in this. And I would request parents to take note of the ways you can bring simple changes in your day-to-day activities while you parent your children. But let's hope to hear more from the parents. So I would request live audience to share your thoughts and share your questions as well, because we will make sure that we take that.
Sure. Meghna, I have been to a lot of your lives earlier as well.
Yeah.
And I see you quoting this thing that says, screen is not a monster. So, can you
Ah,
please decode this for our audience today as well?
don't tell this to my children. I don't say this in front of them, Kinshuk. Jokes apart, yes, I tell this to almost every parent. And see, thanks to this screen, you and me are connecting. Thanks to this screen, we are connecting with thousands of parents through this live webinar. And thanks to the screen, we end up reading, learning, we develop our knowledge base. So, very first thing that I would say is that screen is not a monster. I go by that. And I also strongly believe that the screen, when used wisely, it is a myth among parents that it is chewing up the most active hours of my child's life. I would say screen, if associated with time, that's why we loosely call it screen time. But trust me, the second word has a lot of value behind it. So, screen is not a monster if it is associated with time. And not only time, there are multiple aspects related to it that we need to keep in mind when I'm saying about screen, not a monster. I'll explain this more to you and the audience watching us live as and when we take their questions. But few things that I would like to highlight in this first point that you have raised. Uh, if parents, you have very young children or those moms who are expecting right now, don't kill me for this. I'm simply bringing the research to you. So, if your child has not celebrated the second birthday, if you have not cut the cake yet for the second birthday, my humble request is to keep in mind that a screen is a monster. In that sense, a screen is a monster. American Pediatric Association, or even from Indian perspective, the Medical Association in India also very much in the same line highlight very clearly that first 2 years zero screen exposure. Mommies who are expecting avoid as much as possible. to have the screen exposure. I know easier said than done, but we do recommend that. But for mothers, we still have very preliminary studies, those who are expecting. But there are many studies to highlight, Kinshuk, that between 0 to 2 years, screen exposure is detrimental in multiple ways, not only brain development, not only in language development, but we do see brain structural changes, thinning of cortex and all. I'll explain this more as and when we take questions, but I would heavily recommend parents, if you have not celebrated the second birthday of your child, screen is a monster. Please keep that in mind. If you have celebrated second birthday, then you can gradually start the screen exposure for children. And if a screen exposure is associated with time, if it is in limited quantity, and if you are keeping an eye about the content, for sure you can allow that. The ideal period that is given between 2 years to 6 years, and in fact up to 8 years, is roughly around 40 to 60 minutes a day. This is what is recommended. So if it is coming in those chunks, and I would also recommend parents to take note of that these 40 minutes or so should be divided during the day. So if you can give 20 minutes at one time and 20 minutes at another time of the day, that works ideally. But if you cannot, then for sure it's fine to give at most 40 to 60 minutes at one go for children between 2 to 8 years. For children above 8 years, 8 to 12 years, it stays very much so 1.5 hours max. And between 12 years to the time the child gets into teenage or so, there is a pattern of increase of screen watching because children are now blessed to have smartphones, especially teenagers. So if you ask me the data, it's quite alarming. But for teenagers, the ideal scenario is kept somewhere between 2 hours to 3 hours for whatever exposure of the screen, be it smartphone, be it working on laptop or so. But trust me, the trends are showing very different patterns. So it is high time we build the control. And also, the most important thing is if screen time is regularized between 2 to 6 years, then children are found to be not so addicted or not consuming a lot of content on internet during teenage. So I think, though, if you are watching this particular discussion when your children have not yet attained teenage, then it's a great idea to invest now. It will help you when they go into teenage. We'll discuss it more in depth, what to do, how to do, but I would love to take your questions, Kishan.
Thank you so much, Meghna. I think this is one of the biggest questions coming in from the audience as well. That what is the is there a stipulated guideline about the number of hours that they can expose their children to the screen? Meghna, you mentioned about the effect of screen time on the brain development of children. So, would like you to elaborate a little more on that. So, what is the impact of excessive screen time? Versus why and how does stimulation beyond screen time work in favor of children? So, can you please talk a little about that?
Something very close to my heart. Thank you for asking this question, Kinshuk. I somehow feel this while my interactions with parents on regular basis, thanks to my profession, or when I interact with parents in group in large settings, or I myself being a parent. And then when I connect the studies with the practical aspects related to it, in fact, those parents who are into reading, I would heavily recommend you to take note of few facts. One is that the studies highlight, and in fact, if you are into reading, there is a wonderful report coming out somewhere, if I'm not wrong, December 2018 or so. World Economic Forum talked about it, published it, that is the screen time really alarming, and they have shared a study. In fact, $300 million was spent on this, and what they simply did was checking the MRI scans of children and associate it with the screen exposure and see how it is impacting. And children watching more than 2 hours, just more than 2 hours of screen per day, there was a clear-cut pattern of thinning of cortex. Thinning of cortex, I don't want to get into jargons, you leave those for us to study. But if I have to simplify this to the parents, and I don't want to scare you, but I think as parents, we all need to be aware of it, is that this is a process that happens in brain at later stages of development. So those people who are in their later stages of life, we do see MRI scans coming to us with this thinning of cortex. But happening this in so early in life is alarming. That means the brain is actually aging much faster, and it was associated with the screen time. And I would heavily recommend parents to take note of, again and again, I would say this screen with time. So more than 2 hours in early years might be detrimental, my friends. So keep a watch for this. Uh, while I'm thinking from the perspective, like you asked, other exposures to it, let's first understand the kind of exposure the parent need to do. So I would say parents, it's easier said than done that you pull us around the screen time and say, hey, no, don't watch this much, talk about time and all. But I would always say this one thing, there is a concept now recognized worldwide. We technically call it as digital resilience. And resilience is a very loosely used term, but trust me, it comes with a lot of powers. So parents, it is going to be very difficult if you start policing from day one till the time the child is under your umbrella. Because trust me, as children grow, I work with many teenagers also, and I see a pattern that after a point, teenagers, they have their own style of functioning. They believe that they know everything, and at that time, policing is just not working for many parents. So I would say let's go backward and look in the early years, how can you bring the concept of digital resilience? Digital resilience is nothing but to check, should I watch this? Should I watch this? So you really have to bring the concept of content to children, and also how much should I watch? So what to watch and how much should I watch? So these two aspects, if you keep in mind and start talking around it, digital resilience, it actually works wonderfully for children. Also, one more important thing that I would like to share over here is, if you are working on digital resilience, how do you do it? There is a concept called a digital diet. So if you have children who have celebrated second birthday and you are starting the screen exposure, I did it with both my children. I don't know how successful I am as a mommy, and I don't think on those lines when it comes to my motherhood, whether I'm successful or not. I just enjoy it with them. But yes, I did work on it with my own children, so I can say it with utmost confidence because I did it. So, parent dear, just use this. The way you talk about healthy diet, yeah. So you talk about should I eat this? Should is this healthy? Will this make me grow? The similar way you talk about digital diet with your children. So should I watch this? What am I learning from this? What is it that I'm doing together? And this is a wonderful way to bring the concept of digital resilience. Now, you should also be careful in terms of the places where children are watching. So, the moment you say, okay, for your diet, where do we eat our meals? We sit on the dining table and eat. In the similar way, we do not take gadgets here and there. We have a TV in living room, we all watch over there. So, parent here, for digital diet, it's a wonderful idea, very much like you sit with your children and eat together. The similar way, easier said than done. Sit with your child. Please be around physically so that you are also watching what children are watching. You keep an eye and you keep discussing this. Two major benefits coming out of it. One, for sure, you keep an eye what the child is watching. And more than that, the most important thing about watching with your children is to bring the concept of non-addiction, like my child's brain is not addicted. So a simple phenomenon, I think I have shared this in our previous conversations also when questions came, Kinshuk, but I would repeat it over here, is that when the screen is in your hand, and the screen on the wall. These two are different things. So, parents, if you have a habit of passing on the screen to the child, watch on the mobile, watch on the tablet, from today onward, bring this minor change in your lifestyle. Trust me, you will be benefited like anything. Shift that screen to the TV. There are studies that clearly tell us that if screen is watched in a social setting, like in a living room where daddy dear is sitting next to the child, or mommy dear, or siblings, or grandparents, and then the child is watching first, because there will be human interactions, human conversations about the content that is being watched, it doesn't allow brain to get addicted. Second thing, if it is in a social environment like living room, the doorbell will ring, somebody will come, the phone will come, somebody will talk on the phone. These distractions while watching a screen work wonderfully for a child's brain. So these two benefits will come immediately the moment you shift the screen in the palm to the screen on the wall. And I would heavily recommend to bring this change, parents. It will help you immensely. I have done this with many parents, and this is the most common feedback I hear, that in fact, Meghna, you talk about the brain addiction. This helped us in reducing the screen time also, because the child is now in the habit of saying no to screen time once done. This happens gradually, but it does. Now, apart from the screen, the life is much more important than a screen. So, a pattern that we see, and this is a struggle sometimes parents have, that my child is not ready to go out and play. My child is not ready to mingle with other friends because my child is glued to screen. And my humble request to all the parents, I'm okay if you give the screen exposure. I still stand on my point that the screen is not a monster if child has celebrated the second birthday, but not in early mornings and late evenings. So friends, please make sure that the life beyond the screen, like Kinshuk asked me, has to be there. And the ideal time to not give screen exposure is morning and evening hours. Morning, because cortisol hormone, stress hormone, is at its peak, and the moment the child gets into, I got up and I started watching screen, it gets difficult for the child to process because of higher levels of stress hormones, and this brings a lot of destruction in terms of wiring within the brain. And we really discourage that. Higher levels of cortisol with higher levels of screen, the brain structure is really impacted. In evenings, children, those who do not go out and play and they stay indoors while watching a screen, are really reported to not only struggle in socialization, but also found to be struggling in the next day's routine. So the cortisol hormones, the stress hormone, found to be higher in those children who spend evening hours of play. So that's one important thing that I would like to share over here.
Great, Meghna. I think digital diet is a very interesting concept you brought out over here. And moving the screen to from the mobile to the TV is, I guess, something which is a very small change will
Yeah.
impact the children in a big way, like keeping them a little
For sure.
distracted from the screen as well. While you
Yeah.
say this, Meghna, so you also mentioned keeping the screen static at one place, like watching it from this in the living room only and not everywhere. So, will establishing a routine in general for a child help limit screen time, and rather not limit screen time, but make it more effective for the child and the parents? Will it make it easier for them?
Uh, if you have seen our conversations in past, or when I interact with parents, I feel like myself as a broken record, because I talk a lot about bringing a routine. Um, Routine has its science because it gives predictability to human brain, and any human brain which knows what's coming next to me is found to be at peace. Unpredictability, like what's coming next, gives you stress, right? That's a very common pattern of human brain functioning. Having said that, I would say let's go beyond this, Kinshuk. Routine brings harmony in human brain, well established concept. Let's not dig deeper into this. But routine will help you in reduction of screen time? Probably yes. But that's not the only benefit of routine when it comes to children. So I would say the routine has a very simple phenomenon, and if those parents who are trying to bring a routine, they should know about a concept of 40-minute window. 40-minute window is basically, if I wake up my child at 7 in the morning, let's imagine I should wake up my child every single day between 7 and 7:40. So this 40-minute window allows my brain to process what's going on, and it becomes a routine for me. So I am not at stress. Not only that, I am more efficient in meeting the day-to-day functioning through my body. So I would say routine helps in controlling screen time because tuck, 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 tuck. I go one after another. I get up, I take bath, I brush my teeth, I have my breakfast, then I go for my routine in the sense the activities that I do. And then I have a lunch time, then I have my evening snacks, then I go out and play. I meet my friends, and I come back and have my dinner and go to bed. So routine for sure helps you in bringing a kind of discipline in life. And I recently read an article which was kind of news to me also, that discipline is a word that has negative connotation in minds of Indian parents. So I would first request Indian parents to understand that discipline is a very positive word. It has nothing to do with punishment. It has nothing to do with harsh or conversations or shouts or even sometimes spanking. But discipline is basically I know what's coming next and I abide by my routine. So I would heavily recommend this. There are studies, Kinshuk, that highlight that children who follow routine on daily basis are found to have controlled exposure of screen. So probably routine contributes in controlling screen time, but for sure that's not the only benefit. Routine coming into as rescue for many parents when children are showing temper tantrums, when children are having eating disorders, when children are struggling in making friends. Even we have studies highlighting these benefits of routine, and that's why I said while answering this question that I might sound like a broken record, but if you ask me, I'm a big fan of routine, not only as a professional, but as a mommy too. I'm kind of particular in that sense that at what time children go to bed and at what time we have our dinner, breakfast, and lunch at home also. Sometimes the family members crib about it, but trust me, if I lose it once, I lose it forever. So for routine, it's an important thing that you do it daily. And then your friend circle, the support system you have, will also understand that, okay, if this is the time for children to go to bed, they respect it. They really respect it. So I would say bring routine, not only for the benefit of controlling screen time, but many other benefits associated with it.
Got it, Meghna. We have a lot of questions coming in, but I would request the audience to please keep typing in their questions. We will take it towards the end of the session. So, Meghna, while you said routine is important and yeah, it'll set up predictability for children and help parents manage the screen time also more gainfully. Uh,
Mhm.
could you also highlight some engaging non-screen activities and hobbies that parents can introduce to the children, so as to promote like the overall development of the children and reduce their reliance on screen time to fight boredom, which is very popular term used by a small child also these days. So, could you suggest some activities and hobbies there?
Um, Kinshuk, I'll take quick first minute to talk about screen exposure first, and then we will talk about the activities beyond screen. When I'm talking about the screen exposure, like I talked about digital resilience, I talked about digital diet. I also want to highlight parents one simple concept that they should keep in mind is something I call as digital pyramid. So parents, when you are trying to understand the concept of screen time, I would heavily recommend one thing, that keep this pyramid very much like Maslow's hierarchy. Keep this pyramid in mind. So the bottom of the pyramid, the screen exposure or whatever you are doing, has to be more interactive in nature, and also the active participation from the child. So if you are thinking that my child is watching a nursery rhyme, or my child is learning numbers through this, and oh, that's a good exposure, I'm doing great in giving this exposure to the child through a screen, and if you think that that will benefit your child, uh, I would like to break this myth. The reality is that if you think my child is mugging up on the nursery rhymes or mugging up on the number songs, this is not giving the conceptual clarity to the child. It is just that I'm listening something and I'm memorizing something. So the brain functions differently when it comes to memorization, and the brain functions differently when it comes to analysis of the concept. So please, parents, please note one simple fact, that you need to focus on enhancing the conceptual clarity, enhancing the analysis part of the concept rather than memorization of the concept. So in the bottom of the pyramid, if you are giving a lot of the exposure on nursery rhymes or numbers or so, cut that down. The best exposure through a screen, especially for children between 2 to 8 years, is actually giving them the concept of real life skills, giving them the concept of values, giving them the concepts of good habits, ethics that you want them to focus on throughout their lives. This is the time to invest that through a screen. So one good thing about digital pyramid is have the clarity, what should I give more and what should I give less at the top. So come out of the myth that I should give a lot of exposure of educational videos like literacy, numeracy. I would say leave that task to the preschool or daycare or the early years education professionals, because they do it much better than the screen, if you ask me. So I would heavily recommend parents to come out of this myth. uh, the top of the pyramid is actually for these educational videos. So give them in limited quantity to reinforce the learned concept. So let's imagine your child learns something in the school, which is as simple as big numbers or small numbers. Then you can for sure show a video which reinforces it, but make sure that the child first learns the concept clearly and then only you do it. So keep this digital pyramid in mind, that instead of giving a lot of exposure about educational videos, I should bring it at the top. And for the bottom, I should keep the videos that are more aligned with my own ethics, my own values, my own ways or life skills that I want my children to learn. The absorption of such content is found to be higher in children, especially between 2 to 8 years. It stays with them. So if you have any particular epic that you want children to see, any particular Panchtantra stories that you want your children to see, those are better videos to get exposed to in early years for children. Now the life beyond screen. I'm sorry, Kinshuk, but this was one important discussion I wanted to have, so I took time on that. The activities beyond screen, I would say, parents, a simple formula for that. You have to keep reminding to yourself, and sometimes I say, we really get into this zone in the humdrum of life that I am here to entertain my child. I am here to keep my child engaged. Uh, these are the sentences I'm quoting from many mommies and daddies I hear, that Meghna, I know I need to keep my child engaged. I know I need to bring the right kind of stimulation to my child. I know that, oh, my child is getting bored. I better be doing something about it. And my answer to all these statements, I'm sorry to say, but boredom is brilliant, kinship for childhood. It is actually a very important concept in childhood. Children discover their own ways if they are allowed to get bored on how to occupy the mind in the right direction. At this time, if the adult intervenes, actually you are compromising on the creativity of the child. So please do not think that you need to give everything on a platter to keep your child busy. No, you just have to set up an environment which keeps the child busy, and the home environment is perfect. So I would rather say make sure your home is safe enough for the child to explore, and then leave your child with the things. It can be as simple as kitchen dabbas. It can be as simple as the old books. It can be as simple as just hearing the newspapers. You really, really need not to think on the lines that how do I occupy my child if it is summer break or a break in between. So my best suggestion over here is parents don't think that we are here to keep them busy. Our job is to just ensure that they are safe and secure. Then it's their job to keep themselves busy. The third and the most important point over here, and as adults we need to be aware of this. I'm saying it more because many of the families I work with, I see a pattern. And in fact, if I go by the population charts coming from the urban Indian population index, and if I follow that, most of the urban Indian families are stopping at one child nuclear families. And if that is the case, if you have only one child at a home, it becomes more important for you to be aware of this third point. And this point is that child needs children. So there is no way an adult can become a child to a child. It is something very important that we need to be aware of. You might feel that, oh, I'm heavily involved parent. You might feel, oh, I have a great nanny at home who will take care of my child. You might feel that, oh, my child is getting exposed to grandparents also. That's wonderful. With due respect to all the adults in the family, I would still say the child needs children, and the child has to get the exposure with other children. Have you ever seen an adult snatching a toy from a child? But you must have seen it in group settings multiple times. And these are the real lessons of life. How do I get my toy back? How do I work around it so that my leadership skills are developing? How do I negotiate? And these are very important life lessons for which the child should get exposure for. So I would say, please, parents, find a place where you can send your child. You can choose or do a thorough research about summer camps. You can do a thorough research about the areas where the child is exposed to group setting, a quality program, a quality daycare. Even for few hours, if you start sending, you will gradually see the value in it. So my humble request is to find a socialization circle for the child. Even in on your weekends or so, can try to develop a cycle where the child is getting exposed to many other children. And these are the real activities that the children deserve, and they should be exposed beyond screen. I hope I could answer your question, Kinshuk.
Yeah, surely, Meghna. Answer my question and beyond. Your knowledge nuggets are always so great. But I will have to stop my questions here, Meghna, because we have a lot of questions coming in from parents.
Oh,
Of
awesome.
that, two major, it's like the elephant in the room. So, how
Uh-huh.
do parents get their children to eat without giving them a screen? So, this is a question that has been repeated by so many parents.
I was expecting this because a few days back I was on another session with some close group of mommies, and this was the question which came again and again. And trust me, um, I would say in my first 1 decade of professional life, I did not hear this question because I started taking these sessions in from 1999 or so. But at that time, the screen was not the big elephant, like you said. But now, especially in last 1 decade or so, I think every session I take, I hear this question. And of course, the answers have evolved because the studies are coming up with different guidelines. But I will share what I recently studied. And parents, I leave the decision on you. How do you want to do it? But before we act on it, before we actually act on it, let's understand how it is impacting the children. Because if you are not convinced, trust me, you might start working on controlling the screen time of your child while eating. But one fine day you will give up. So I would say, please understand. how detrimental it can be for child's growth, then only you can put all your efforts in controlling it. So something very serious, and I always say to parents, keep reminding to yourself what we are discussing in coming few minutes. Most important thing about screen time is it is not a monster if your child has celebrated the second birthday, but it is a monster if it is given while eating. And that's why I said that the screen has to be associated with time, but also with the time of meal time. So should not be no any screen exposure to anybody, not only to children but to parents too, while eating. Now, there are studies that clearly highlight the pattern. The pattern is children who are shown screen while eating, most of the time, majority parents end up feeding their children because the child is glued to the screen, right? So I pick the bite for my child, and my child opens up. I do this action, and then I put it in the child's mouth, and then the child starts chewing while being glued to the screen. And in this process, I tend to forget, and then the child puts the bite over here. And I'm not kidding, Kinshuk. This is the most common pattern I hear from the mommies and daddies I work with. And this is something that studies also highlight. So, what is happening in this whole process? You pick the bite, you are putting it in. But it is a myth that the digestion is starting within my body. The first digestion starts from here. When the fingertips are picking up the bite, that's when they feel the pressure, and my brain dear gets the message that, okay, I need to start chewing, I need to work on my muscles, okay, something is coming in the mouth. And then the second digestion happens over here when I bite, and that's when the body starts kicking in the saliva, which helps in digestion of the food. These two steps are totally missed if you are feeding your child with the screen, because the child is actually glued to the screen. The child is just not doing this. So in long run, this impacts the overall health of the child like anything. There are parents who complain to me that, okay, Meghna, even if I do that, that my child eats on his or her own, the portions are that small. My child hardly eats half a chapati, half a bowl of rice in the age of 6 or 8. How will my child grow? And that's a very valid concern. But if we look backwards, we always see that the child was fed between 2 to 4 years, between 2 to 5 years. So a child is ready to eat on his or her own after 14 months of life on this planet. Simple. You need not to feed your child. The child can pick the food, put it into mouth. So those of you who have young children, please start doing that right now, because that's very important for you to take note of. Second thing that I would heavily recommend to you, because now we are talking about the solution, if we know that it can be that detrimental, we probably need to be working on it. There are only two ways to work on it. So far in my professional life, this is what I have read, and this is what I have worked with many parents. But if you have more solutions, please feel free to share here with for the consumption of other parents. But what we have seen over here is only two ways. One is cold turkey, and another one is gradual progression. In cold turkey method or gradual progression, the first step remains the same. The first step is you go close to your child, hold the hand of the child, and trust me, if your child has celebrated second birthday, your child will understand this. You go look into the eyes of the child and say, Mommy made a mistake. Daddy made a mistake of showing screen to you while eating. We will not do it now. We need to come out of it. Feel free to bring the blame on me. There was a daddy who told me that, Meghna, I blamed you that I attended your session, and after that, this is the change in the family. So I am more than happy to take that blame. Tell them very clearly, I attended a session and I learned this art today, but you have to work on it. And after that, you really have to do it either through cold turkey or gradually. Cold turkey method is shock. If I'm saying this today onward, nobody will watch this screen while eating. And nobody means nobody. That means, as adults, if you have a habit of eating, while watching TV, then you have to cut that down too. Don't expect you watch and I don't allow my child to watch. It's not going to work. So nobody means nobody. The gradual progression is generally we say that you take one meal of the three meals without screen in the beginning, then you add the second meal, and then you add the third meal. So most of the times parents say that my child is most hungry at breakfast, Meghna. So I recommend to start with breakfast. So during breakfast, don't show the screen. Let the child explore the food, let the child take bath in the food, and then you can probably add on lunch and dinner. But I leave the decision on you how you want to progress it. But one meal, then the second meal, and then the third meal, and gradually the child is totally out of it. One thing that we have seen coming up, especially when I was sharing about the portion part, there is a correlation which is yet to be proven through medical science, but we do see a correlation that children who are eating lesser portions than their age appropriate diet, please go and consult your pediatrician and check the iron part of your child, because we have seen a pattern that if iron is not in abundance, then children compromise on their meal intake. The iron supplements provided by the pediatricians, there are studies that highlight that the intake of food has improved in some children, especially between the age group of 2 to 10. So I would recommend parents to take note of that. I have seen this with roughly 50 children. So this might help some parents for sure when it comes to portions. But my friends, if you are not convinced about it, do read about it. But this is a crime that you are doing if you are allowing screen time with meals. So stop that right away. And these are the only ways you can do it.
Got it, Meghna. Another big question coming up is that children, mostly the parents asking this, say that children do not sit at one place. And the only way to make them sit at one place is the screen. So, how do they, is there any other suggestion for this? And the other question is that how to set up the environment where children can keep themselves busy by them, like on their own. So can you help with that?
These two are different questions, Kinshuk. I'll take one by one. Huh?
Yeah.
So, first question is that my child is roaming around, and then I'm running behind with the bowl in my hand to feed my child. Yeah, mommy dear, I totally understand this. One word of caution here: if your child is recovering from an ailment, then like it is a mild sickness, a viral attack, or a bacterial attack to the child's body, please do not start the change in routine at that time, because the body is already struggling, and then you are bringing your gyan to the child, won't work. So my first thing is, all the suggestions that I have shared with you, please make sure your child is out of a bout of sickness, god forbidden, but if it is there, then please wait for another week before you enter into this. But if you have this habit, something we loosely call as RSD. Uh, RSD is basically restaurant style dining. This is something that I have used actually when my child recovered from an ailment, and elder one, well, he's into teens now almost, but long back, around 10 years back or so, I was struggling with his health. He was recovering from a surgery, and of course the intake was lower. Once the things were coming into pattern, he somehow got into this habit that he was not ready to sit. I was not feeding him, but trust me, he used to take one bite, roam around, come back, and take another bite. So this was a struggle, because all of us are sitting, but he's not to be seen. So what worked for him, for my own child, and then after that, I used this with many parents I work with. Uh, is something as RSD. In RSD, what do? You prepare the meal, and you bring all the bowls, all the plates on the table, and all of you sit together. It's, don't get confused with the word restaurant. I'm not asking you to lit the candles or bring the fancy cutlery out. What I'm trying to say is, all of you sitting either on the mat, on the floor, or on the table, wherever you feel, that works wonderfully in bringing the concept that there is a meal time and meal time has to be used while sitting. I recently read a paper on this in some journal for Ayurveda, and it was talking about eating with hands and sitting on floor. But then there are more studies about it that highlight that if children have habit of roaming around, a good idea is to start eating on floor. So try that if that works. It's not tried and tested from my end, so I cannot say I just read it. But if you can bring all the bowls on a mat on the floor, all of you sit together and then eat, this has reduced the roaming around of the child. This RSD, be it on table or be it on floor, has given me good results. But another important thing about this is what we discussed earlier, Kinshuk, routine. So the moment you have that 40-minute window and the routine is set, then the child's biological clock gets into the zone where the child feels hungry. And if I feel hungry, trust me, my roaming around will reduce on its own. So the iron intake, routine, plus RSD, these three combinations will help you in controlling the child's roaming around. I have seen it I don't have the number, but with, I would rather, for the sake of safety and staying honest, I would say, oh, roughly around 17 or 18 families I have discussed this, and by the end of second or third month they got back to me that of course the child is now sitting and eating. So you should try this. I think this combination should help you. uh, I think you asked me another question, Kinshuk. If you can repeat it, I'm not sure if I will answer in the right way or not.
which is about creating an environment for the child to keep him or her busy by themselves.
Uh, well, part of it I answered. The first step for that, make sure your child is aware of the fact that I can roam around. And for that, you have to prepare your home for that. So we do have elements at home that might be risky for children. So make sure if we are a very young child, a toddler, it's a good idea to cover the corners of the tables. It's a good idea to make sure sockets are intact. The child cannot poke the finger into it. So these basic checks at home. I am not keeping my cleaners on the ground floor or the lower rows of the cabinets. I better be keeping it on top of the cabinets. These very basic checks. I'm sure all parents are aware of it. So first, very important step: make sure your home is safe. If you have children younger than 7 or 8, it's a good idea to keep doing this check again and again. And after that, I would say, parents, you, I'm not sure if you will like my answer or not, but I'll share two studies with you. The first one, children were given multiple toys and some very natural elements like dry leaves, a sand pit, and then there is a small pond, and children were left in that environment. It's a huge study, 40,000 children. It's a huge study, and the patterns were not very surprising to somebody like us who study and work for children. Uh, they clearly said that toys will remain untouched. The two most favorite toys of children, sandpit and water table. So I would say, parents, I hope you got your answer. If you can create something which is biophilic in nature, biophilia is my love for nature. It's a wonderful thing to bring natural elements to the children and lead them in the nature. When the child rubs the hand on the tree bark, when the child plays with the sand, when the child splashes in the water, these are the ways not only for sensory exploration and development of circuitry of brain, these are the ways where all the stress goes away. I feel elated as a child. So, friends, please keep this study in mind. The two most favorite toys, sand and water. The second study that I wanted to highlight to parents, because you are asking me about the manipulatives and resources and toys to bring. So this is a very interesting story done in Nordic countries. And what they did was, like, they gave the child a toy wrapped in the box. The box is for the toy, and then they gifted it to the child. And this study was done on toddlers and older children equally. And you know what? and they just leave the room and they observe the child through hidden cameras, and then the response of the children were recorded. Uh, Surprisingly or not so surprisingly, children explored toy for first 2 to 2.5 minutes, and then they moved to the box of the toy for another 5 to 10 minutes, and they stayed with the box much longer. They created something out of it, they tore it apart, built something, whatever they did, but the toy was lying in one side of the corner, which was very interesting toy. And they explored more and more the box. So I would really request parents to take this study in mind and think that you need not to fill your home with manipulatives, with toys. It is just that you need to allow your child to explore as much as possible. If you really want to build something for your child or bring something for your child, a wonderful idea is to create a role play area for your child. So if you have a space and if you are really inclined, a wonderful thing to do is to develop a role play. And what I mean by that, get some stuff like what doctors wear, what teachers wear, what a firefighter wears, and hang it on one side of the room. Then you can keep some stuff for community helpers and things like that. If you have very young children, it works wonderfully. They stay occupied with the mirror in the corner for hours together. It is equally true for both girl and boy children. So don't think only girls look in the mirror, boys do too. And if you have older children, it's a great idea to develop a social plan, like I said. Bring more children at your home and allow these children to play with each other, fight with each other. You really need not to create something. I hope that should help Kinshuk. But one quick thing: if you are really struggling in deciding what to bring for your child beyond screen, there is a very famous saying from Magda Gerber. I use it multiple times. Magda Gerber is a wonderful lady who worked for infants and above, and she says it very beautifully. An active toy will make your child passive, and a passive toy will make your child active. What do I mean by that? Active toy means the toy that works through remote, flashes light, dancing on its own, and all those things, or even the screen. These are active toys. So the child becomes passive. I sit at one corner and just watch it. I'm not doing anything about it. The other way around, a passive toy. Passive toy means the spoons and the forks, the kitchen dabbas, the simple building blocks, the floor puzzles, or the role play areas. All of these come under passive toys. These make children active because that's when the children develop something to play with, and that's most important in today's world. So I hope that should help parents.
Thank you so much, Meghna. It brings back the visuals that I have at home when I go back from work. I have some foldable mattresses, a couple of them kept outside. And every day I go back to different formats of tents made with a play mat, the mattresses, some blankets. And my daughter is super happy with that. She doesn't need any toys beyond that.
Awesome, man. See, this is a proof right straight from the heart of a mommy. This works. This works, really works.
Yeah. While children being busy by themselves is a great visual and something to look forward to, but we all, as mothers, as parents, rather, have had the another visual at home where we switch off the TVs and we have a big scene of a meltdown and children fighting for their screen time. So, how do
Huh.
parents deal with that?
Uh, um, what I'm loving in today's discussion that the solutions are not only oriented towards screen time, Kinshuk. These solutions can be used in multiple ways, and I would answer this question also in the same way. So let's understand it more from the perspective of a meltdown or a temper tantrum. That I turn off the TV, my child is on the floor, howling, shouting. But that's a pattern that you must have seen other places also. Let's say you go to a grocery shopping and your child is hammering that I want to buy this, I want to buy this, and you for sure know that it is super unhealthy for your child, you don't want to buy it. And then the child is on the floor howling, no, no, I want to take it and all. So all of this come into the concept of bringing discipline. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. Discipline is a very positive word, not negative. So this is all rooted in bringing the concept of discipline at home. And discipline has 3 steps. Let's try to understand how do we do this, how do we bring this. So there are 3 strategies, 3 points that we need to keep in mind. One is before the movement strategy. Second, in the movement strategy. And third, after the movement strategy. Let's try to understand this before, during, and after. So when you turn off the TV, or when you say no to the child at the grocery shop or any other place, and your child is throwing a tantrum, banging the head, howling, shouting, crying, that's how many parents tell me, Meghna, my son has, just yesterday daddy told me, my son has a habit, these kind of the non-stop noises come when I say no. And trust me, we all go through that. I have been through this as well as a mommy. So during the moment when my child is making these noises, throwing or so, parent dear, just keep your hands to yourself and tell yourself again and again, you really can't do much about it right now. Right now, in this moment, no point in giving any yarn to your child. My brain is just not listening. My ears are just not listening what you are saying, daddy dear or mommy dear, when I'm really reeling out of control. So no point in preaching anything at this point. Instead, you need to focus on your own response. You are boiling within, right? So don't shout. Don't really respond. In fact, I would use the word react to this. And please be careful that you need not to shout louder than your child in this moment. Easier said than done, but you have to keep reminding to yourself. So keep your body to yourself. This is the moment when parent end up hitting. And as a child psychologist and as a mother, I must tell one thing: hitting is just not the solution. If you ended up hitting your child, this is the worst thing you can do. You have lost the battle of parenting. I'm okay if you shout. I'm okay if you have scoldings. I'm okay if you show the eyes of anger and body language and all that. But spanking or hitting a big no, no, parents, please don't do that. It's a lost battle for you if you do this even for once. So, and if you have done it in past, today is probably the right day to stop it right away. So please control yourself during the movement. This is all you can do. Now focus on before and after. These two are the major strategies you need to focus on. So before, like say screen time, what works wonderfully, Kinshuk, many parents, I say this, don't use digital clock, but use the analog clock and show the needle to the child when you start it. And what do I mean by starting it? Let's say the big needle is at 12 and you have fixed 40 minutes for the child. So before starting, tell your child, the big needle is at 12. When it comes to 8, we need to turn it off, buddy. And say it very simply, 4 to 5 words in your sentences and 4 to 5 sentences in one conversation, enough to set the rule. So just say, buddy, we are starting at 12. When the big needle comes at 8, time up for a screen. That's it. This is before the movement strategy. You know, when I turn it off, the episode will come. So you set the bars well in advance. You do this to them, there will be a good reduction. We have also done a simple study at our end, and I should share this with parents, that instead of you picking up the remote and turning it off, a very simple change. You pick the remote and give it to your child and say, turn it off, buddy, time is up. Turn it off, time is up. Turn it off, time is up. That will help you in reduction of that temper tantrum for screen time. So these are few before the strategies that you can bring. For grocery shop example, before you take your children for shopping, make the uh, rule very clear. You can pick any one thing that you like, and then you make sure you give that. But the second thing, No, no, we decided for first one thing, we can't buy the second one. Stand on it. Don't change your no to yes, no matter what. So please keep that in mind. After strategy is, let's say your child has a meltdown, the child shouted, cried, banged his head, whatever it was. As I said, in that movement, no point in making the child aware that it is unacceptable. With a gap of around 4 hours of the episode, like if this episode happened, let's imagine at 3 p.m., you should not discuss this before 7 p.m. Around 7 p.m., sit with your child and take your hands, put it on heart, and just simply say, I felt bad the way you behaved, be it in grocery shop, be it for screen time, be it anywhere. I mama felt sad to see you like that. Daddy felt sad to see you like that. And then for sure tell them that next time if you do this, it will make me more sad. Let's not do this, buddy. And at this time you set the rule. So before and after strategies will help you a lot in controlling that moment. Please try that. It will benefit you.
Sure, Meghna. Sorry, we have overshot our time, but I have one last question from a parent.
Okay.
And it shows how your talks have inspired people. So the parent says that I wanted to understand, what if the kid is already exposed to screen between 12 to 24 months? We have stopped the screen time to zero now since 3 months. However, the child has the temperament and delayed speech. So, what can the parent do about it now?
One thing that I would tell you, parent, for this particular scenario that you have highlighted, it's a great thing. It's a great call you have taken. You are not the first one who is telling me this, that Meghna, so far I have shown between 8 months to 12 months, and now after hearing you, I stopped. But I have already committed the crime, right? What to do now? Uh, so, first thing, parents, what has happened, you cannot change. You have taken the right decision of stopping it. I'm not sure if this works or not, but there are studies that clearly highlight us that the impact of a screen in terms of circuitry of brain under the age of 2, this can be built up again if a parent is interacting more with the child in terms of expression of language, expression of emotions. So if you can enhance your conversations through your mouth, not through a recorder or something like that, not through the TV. Like only the audio also is not recommended here. I say this to many mommies: don't play the night music on recorder. Don't put the lullabies on the recorder. The lullabies, no matter how besura you are, when it comes from your mouth, that has an attachment. Just last night, I was singing a lullaby to my daughter because she came to me and she said, "Wo wala song suna," which you used to sing earlier. And trust me, Kinshuk, I'm super besura. I love music, but I'm really pathetic when it comes to singing. But somehow I enjoyed, she enjoyed, she slept while listening, and that was a very wonderful bonding moment. This happened just last night, and that's why it's fresh in my mind. So I would say, parent dear, please do sing a lot of lullabies to your children through your mouth, not through some recorded audio. This will help you. And for this particular question, I would say, Kinshuk, it doesn't look like to me, it's too early to comment that, oh, the screen time was the culprit for the speech delay. It might have played some role, but it should not be the only case. So I would say observe more. If you are really concerned, please make sure that you discuss it with your pediatrician, route it through the right resources, right professionals. We need to dig deeper into this. What are the causes and the factors playing role into this? I cannot comment this without observing the child and without running the standard assessments. But I will say one thing for sure, that your own conversations with children, don't think that my child is not understanding. Your child is understanding. Your body language, the words coming out of your mouth works wonderfully. And also, Kinshuk, one thing that we all are blessed with, and I think that's the best way to end this session. We live in a country which is blessed with multiple languages, and I'm a big fan of multilingualism. as a mommy, as a professional too. So if you can bring exposure of different languages in your child's life, we have seen a clear pattern that higher the exposure of languages in a child's life, higher is the vocabulary and higher is the expressive speech. So please do try that multilingualism. Take help of your house helpers if they talk in other languages. Ask them to sing the folk songs from their origins, and these things will help you a lot in bringing the expressive language higher. But this is a very general answer, Kinshuk. For this particular case, we need to observe the child, work with the child, and then we can probably support the parent more.
Sure. Thank you so much, Meghna. Thank you for your time, and thank you to all the engaged parents who have been here through the webinar. Thank you for joining us. I hope you have gained some valuable strategies and perspectives on making the most of the screen time while also prioritizing your children's stimulation and activity levels. So, we sincerely hope your parenting journey is filled with joyful moments and endless possibilities. We will see you back soon with another webinar. So, stay tuned with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tam Kinshuk. I always love to hear from the parents. That's like my feed. I love to hear more from them. And thank you so much, parents, for joining this session. You sitting here, listening here, talks volumes about you as a parent. And trust me, if you are so involved and if you are so focused on getting the right kind of knowledge in for your parenting, nothing can beat it. We all learn and grow with our children. I always say the day the child was born, a mother was born too, a daddy was born too. So we all will make our mistakes and learn through those. We are not perfect, but we are the best ones for our children. And thank you so much for the flooding of questions. My apologies, we could not take up all the questions, Kinshuk, but time is a constraint here. But thank you so much for listening to it so patiently, and thank you for your encouraging words. It actually motivates me to study more and bring the right kind of information at your desk. My apologies again to those parents whose questions could not be taken in this session, but thank you so much.
Thank you once again. See you.